guys, it's Nick here with What Game Now, and it's a couple hours past Games Workshop's preview seminar here on May 23rd, and we're going to do this follow-up video that I promised in my preview. So, I don't know if it was a misunderstanding on my part. I've gone back and I've looked, and I'm not entirely sure I had a mistaken assumption. I was wrong, obviously, but I'm not convinced it was incorrect to assume what I did. But I thought this was going to be more than just 40K. Turns out it was only 40K. So anything that wasn't 40K, we can just skip. So, a couple of things right off the bat. I said that we were going to see news on how Psychic Awakening was going to close, hopefully with a date for Engine War. We got the former, not the latter, so no dates yet, but they did discuss how Psychic Awakening was going to close off, and then the big reveal for the entire thing, essentially, was that 9th edition 40K is happening. So, what I'm going to do is we're going to hit the broad strokes of 9th edition that I think are important. There is going to be a follow-on video to this where I'm going to go through and essentially look at 8th, what are my problems with 8th, what is coming in 9th, and kind of putting that all into words. They did show off some new models. They did show off a new book series, and we're going to go through all that in approximately that order. So right off the bat with the new edition, one thing they wanted to stress was that they were going to put things that they learned into practice over the last 3 years of 8th edition. They've been much more aggressive with, well, I don't say aggressive, but they've been much more active in the community with 8th edition, and they say that they're trying to bring as much as they can into 9th edition, which is good. So things like quality of life improvements. Right off the bat, one thing they wanted to make very clear, your codexes and Psychic Awakening books are still good for 9th edition. You do not have to repurchase any books for 9th edition aside from a new rulebook. Now, I do want to say this. I do fully expect there to be 9th edition codexes for all of the armies. But that's business as usual, not, hey, in 2 months when this new edition comes out, you need to plan to drop $300 in books. No. All your stuff's going to transfer over until it gets replaced. So a couple major points they mentioned with 9th edition I want to go over. They wanted to create a more flavorful and narratively fulfilling experience. Now, they were a little vague on what that meant, but what I think they're trying to do is make it feel like 40K, where 8th edition can lead to some very weird and strange situations, and they're trying to address that. Things that are not necessarily consistent with the way it would work in the world. They also said that they want to help and ensure that everyone experiences the same version of the game. And what I implied off that, what I read off of that is, right now, if you're not familiar, 40K, there is a significant departure in terms of how people in different areas approach, handle, and interpret and even play 40K. And it sounds like they're trying to address that. They want 40K to be 40K, and then not have a Las Vegas version, a Washington version, and a London version of 40K. We'll see how that goes, but that was a stated intent. They also did say that launching with 9th would be an app that would do army building, and they said there's some other stuff coming forth. They're a little vague on it, but there is an army building app coming. They promised one for 8th edition, but that never really materialized, so we'll see how that goes. They mentioned a few things also that they wanted to do with the new edition. So first off, they said that the way that command points are generated is being changed. Instead of generating command points for taking detachments, it actually goes backwards. You spend command points to unlock new detachments. Their goal was to make standalone codexes the norm, not this weird, they call it soup right now, where everybody's mixing all these things together to maximize and abuse command points as much as possible. And they also said that those command points are based off of game size, not your armies. Because one of the issues that they had was some elite armies like Adeptus Custodes had problems generating enough command points to use the cool stuff that they had. So that sounds good. Okay. They did promise that there would be a change to tanks, specifically with the eye towards the offense. They'd be able to shoot into combat, or shoot out of combat, because right now, if I charge your tank in hand-to-hand, your tank has to fall back. If you fall back, the tank can't shoot, so I essentially took the tank out of the game for a turn. They said they rebuilt terrain, specifically referencing cover and line of sight changes. When we get to the follow-on video, I want to reference that one, because that's the most encouraging change I've heard out of all this. They wanted a game that played well at all sizes. They changed how reserves work. They also addressed a concern with the current edition that weapons that were designed to deal with hordes that were like explosive didn't really do that. So they added a new weapon type called Blast, which is going to get a benefit for shooting larger units. They also hit the aircraft rules, and then in general, just a bunch of clarifications and made the core rules as clear as possible. Lots of examples, things like that. As an important note, if you want more, they are doing a follow-up Q&A 7 p.m. BST on Tuesday. So that's in U.S. time, that's like 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, I think. Don't quote me on that, though. So that was kind of the broad strokes with 9th edition. Key takeaways here. It sounds imminent. It sounds, actually the way that they worded it, it sounds like it's going to come out before Psychic Awakening is over. Your books, your codexes, your Psychic Awakening books, your supplements are going to be good for 8th edition, although I personally would fully expect that the norm of GW to continue, that eventually those books will be replaced by new ones, but you don't have to plan on that in the next couple months. And then they also mentioned the actual design and intent changes, which, like I said, we're going to go into detail on those and kind of, do I think they're good, do I think they're bad, do I think they hit the nail on the head? Alright, so let's talk about some models here. So they showed off, in the trailer, they did a wonderful cinematic trailer. There's some new stuff in that trailer, and they did say that pretty much all that's going to come into the game. It is worth noting that the trailer is not part of the new animated series that they are doing, so it's not, you're not going to see that. It looks like it's the same animation style, but that trailer is not part of the animated series. They showed off 2 new models in great detail and hinted very heavily at one more. The models in great detail that they showed off, they have a Assault Intercessor for the Space Marines, which is a chainsword and heavy bolt pistol variant of the Intercessors. It also is worth noting that they did launch a new website which shows off another model that appears to have a Storm Shield and a Volkite weapon, which is very interesting for various reasons. If you're not familiar with 40K, don't worry too much about it. Suffice it to say, that's a pretty significant revelation. The other thing they showed off was Necrons. So the Necrons are getting a new warrior kit that has 2 weapon options. The Gauss Flare, I think, is the current gun, the current weapon, and then there's a new one called a Gauss Reaper that's short-ranged, more powerful, and an assault weapon. They did mention that with the, so part of this, they very heavily implied that Necrons are getting a significant overhaul. They're being sold as a bigger threat to the galaxy in line with Chaos and the Tyranids and all that. And so they did do a little bit of talking about that. The new warriors look, the best way to describe it is undead death robots. Probably the best way to describe what they look like. They look really cool. I have some concerns, though, because it doesn't really fit the aesthetic of the rest of the faction. The warriors and the flayed ones have this kind of undead robot aesthetic, but then you look at like the Praetorians and things like that, they don't look the same way. Now granted, you could accomplish a lot of that with a paint job, but still it's a little surprising. And the other thing they said is there's reanimation protocols are going to change, they're going to scale depending on what you're dealing with, which, okay, that sounds good. So looking at new Primaris, Assault Intercessors, new Necrons, I do want to address, there are some other images floating around for the Space Marines that are some bikes, a character, and a unit with swords and storm shields. I'm inclined to believe that those are accurate. So there's a rather notorious blurry image from a while back that showed off what we thought were Primaris bikes. They are consistent with the image that we saw in these renders. The character we didn't see anything for, but it is worth noting that the renders did show off the Assault Intercessors, including one model exactly. And then if you go to the website and look for that model with the Volkite and sword and shield, there's a different version of that that appears to have swords. And they look exactly the same, tabards, pistols, where like the pistol holsters are and everything. So I'm inclined to think that those are legit, but they weren't part of the stream. And then the last major thing that they addressed with this stream was a new book series called Dawn of Fire. So Dawn of Fire is a new Black Library series in line with the Horus Heresy, the Siege of Terra, the Beast Arises, that ties into 9th edition. And it is a look at the Indomitus Crusade, which is a major event in 40K that was the coming of the Primaris Space Marines, or their first foray into combat. It is a full series, so expect there to be a number of these. The first one's coming out is called Avenging Sun, and they did not give a date on that. So that actually concludes the once-over of what we're looking at with this new, reveal that they did. I'm cautiously interested is probably the best way to describe it. 9th edition I think is desperately needed. Some of what they've said concerns me, but if you want to hear the details on that, check out our next video. So with that, guys, have a good one.
Hey, this is Dave. If you like what we're doing here at What Game Now, go ahead and click on one of the videos, which should be on either side of me, or click right in the middle and go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the bell once you subscribe so that you know when we have new videos. Please go ahead and share us with your friends. Let everybody know that we're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for all of our subscribers already. And we look forward to bringing you more content every chance that we get.